Ferrari won their last championship with Kimi in the Mesozoic era. Since then, they spent nearly $2 billion and built 18 different cars, but they didn't win a single championship. And in this video, we are not going to talk about the good cars in those 18. Instead, we are going to talk about the shittiest ones. And of course, we are going to start with the SF1000 from 2020. Well, there's only one single way to make you really understand how bad this car was. This is Sebastian Vettel's hairline just before he started driving this car. And this is Sebastian Vettel's hairline right after he's done with driving this car. The only thing Vettel was lucky about that situation was having the Turkish Grand Prix on the calendar that season. And interestingly enough, Vettel achieved his only podium finish of that season in Istanbul. So anyway, let's get back to talking about how shit the car was. And to be fair, there are actually reasonable reasons why this car was bad. One of them is that the engine they made in 2019 was rigged, so FIA banned it. And this put them in an undesirable situation, like having their fight in the championship with Red Bull's Junior AS team. The situation was so bad that even Lord Stroll scored more points than Vettel, and even Albon scored more points than Leclerc. In terms of results, it was the worst season in 40 years for the team. They built that car knowing that they had an incredibly powerful engine since 2019, but as we eventually understood, it was a bit borderline in terms of legality. But this was not actually their greatest masterpiece, because the next car in our list is the Ferrari F14T from 2014. This car is known for having both understeer and oversteer at the same time. Well, I don't want to sound like a nerd, but technically, it's actually understeering when entering the corner and oversteering when exiting the corner, which is probably worse, by the way. Well, Ferrari thought downforce was key this year and intentionally laid the power unit out in a way to maximize aero downforce and efficiency at the expense of internal combustion engine power. And this was the exact opposite of what Mercedes did. Interestingly, while Ferrari was providing job opportunities for psychology graduates, Mercedes was dominating the entire season. And the worst part about this car being the most undrivable Ferrari so far is that Ferrari had the best driver lineup of that era with Fernando Alonso and Kimi Räikkönen. Well, the most interesting part about this car is that Alonso almost won with this tractorish hovercraft in Hungary. The 2014 season was perhaps one of his best individual performances. Fernando is known for getting the best results from bad cars, and this was perhaps the season he demonstrated that best. He was so good that he scored almost more points with that car than four-time world champion Sebastian Vettel. Meanwhile, Kimi had a really difficult season and only managed to get the same points as the current rookie Kevin Magnussen with 55 points. Well, perhaps the only well-made thing about the car was its nose, and even though it was well-made, it was also looking ugly as a gremlin. And the next car in our list is the Ferrari F60 for the 2009 season. Well, this car was slow because of multiple reasons. First of all, both McLaren and Ferrari were on the back foot after the 2008 title fight. That championship went down to the last race. Both teams were pushing hard when other teams had already switched their efforts to 2009. Well, also that year, there were a lot of changes in cars with the new regulations. Therefore, it wasn't a year where they could put a similar car in the next season with these simple changes. And since Ferrari was caught unprepared by these regulations, they could only bring a midfielder car to the grid. I think this season was the beginning of the end for Ferrari. Also, to be fair, this car wasn't that bad when compared to the cars from 2014 and 2020. But back then, nobody expected Ferrari to make a tractor. It was the standard average expectation that Ferrari would fight for the championship. Ferrari drivers had won a total of 1.5 championships in the last 2 years. So considering those circumstances, the 2009 car was truly terrible. Well, despite everything, Kimi worked a miracle in Belgium with that car and managed to win a race. But for the rest of the season, Ferrari was a complete ghost. The next car in our list is the Ferrari SF16 for the 2016 season. Well, if we're going to be objective, that car was the third fastest on the grid that year. But the real problem with this car was that it was not only much more slower than the fastest car, but it was also intergalactically slower than the second fastest car. So while it was too fast to be a midfielder, it found itself in exactly that position. Vettel had a fantastic start to his first season with Ferrari in 2015, and he genuinely believed they could close the gap to Mercedes in 2016. But the reality was that even when the two Mercedes cars were out of race, they still finished behind a mad 18-year-old kid named Max Verstappen. Also back then, the McLaren factor didn't exist, so if you were third, the team behind you was most likely a Force India or Williams. So the fact that Ferrari has the third fastest car doesn't mean they've made a good car at all. And of course, the next car on our list is the Ferrari SF25 for the 2025 season. Since this covers a fairly recent period, you probably already know what happened, but I'll give you my own perspective. So just in 2024, Ferrari almost won the Constructors' Championship, and then Lewis Hamilton arrived to the team for the 2025, and there was a huge hype train going on. Poor Carlos was objectively faster than Lewis at the time, but that wasn't enough for Ferrari to keep him. But Ferrari made such a bad car that Carlos is probably genuinely happy right now that he was ruthlessly fired from the team, because while he achieved 2 podium finishes with his new team Williams, Lewis set a record as one of the rare Ferrari drivers who couldn't even get a single podium finish in an entire season. But to be fair, even though Lewis wasn't in his best form, he wasn't the reason for the failure. When you leave the team you've dedicated your years only to sign with Ferrari and receive a red tractor and free therapy sessions in return, it's quite normal to not perform well. Despite everything, Lewis showed what he could do by winning the sprint race in China. Well, the Ferrari was the 4th fastest car for much of the season, but it wasn't a midfield car. It was much faster than the other midfield cars, but quite weak compared to the 3 cars it had to beat. At the end of the day, Ferrari can overcome a bad season like that. But the car and also the team damaged massively Lewis's legacy. He is in the final years of his career, and just like with Vettel, we are forgetting how good he was. We are now about to enter the 2026 season with new regulations, and hopefully, when the season ends, the Ferrari car won't be the kind that's featured in this video. Well, before moving on to the next car, you can share your predictions and opinions on whether Ferrari has built a car that can compete for the championship for the 2026 season. And the next car is actually from before Ferrari's championship in 2007, so it probably shouldn't be on the list. But I still wanted to include it because unlike the other cars, this time the problem was not directly with the car. Yes, the car performed shit, but it wasn't about the car. It was more about the tires. And the next car in our list is the Ferrari F2005. Well, this car was slow, and as everyone knows, the main problem was obviously the Bridgestone tires. But actually, there's a bit more to it. Ferrari were far closer to the other Bridgestone cars that year, so it was not 100% Bridgestone's fault. The specific problem was that the Ferrari cars liked to have a lot of forward weight distribution, and this didn't suit the 2005 tires at all. Hence, not only were the Bridgestone tires less competitive, they also had the same rules Michelin did, but Ferrari were less able to maximize them. Well, despite everything, Ferrari still managed to win 1 race that season, but it wasn't exactly their success. Before I explain how this victory came about, I need to explain something else so you fully understand what was going on. So, at the time, Bridgestone and Michelin were Formula One's tire suppliers. Most teams used Michelin, whose tires performed better in 2005 when they had this odd quirk that tires must do the whole race unless the weather changed or they suffered damage. But a mix of issues with track resurfacing and Michelin's construction meant Michelin tires had a higher risk of failure at Indianapolis. Apparently, they worked out they'd only last 10 laps, so 7 teams using Michelin tires were unable to race. Basically, Ferrari only competed against 2 teams in that race. That's why I am saying it's pretty hard to say that the car actually deserved to win a Grand Prix. Well, these were all the Ferrari cars I wanted to mention in this video. Thank you for watching and see you on the next one.